Hi, welcome to another episode of Mom Does It All. If you're looking for encouragement, empowerment, and uplifting in motherhood and mompreneurship, this is the show for you. I'm your host, Marta Spurk, triplet mom, certified success coach, and all things motivation extraordinaire. In this episode, I talk about how I've been combining all my knowledge from the Bible and my past to science to understand more about how we create our reality and how powerful our brain is. I also talk about my realizations in terms of a lifelong career as a teacher and now teaching moms how to define and create their own happiness. Let's dive in. Last week, I talked about how I was super excited to get this book about how our brain works, and I got it and I started reading it. So it's called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, How to Lose Your Mind and Create a New One by Dr. Joe Dispenza. And I love it. I love it because he talks about exactly what I've been so interested about for a long time, and especially now with my coaching, when he says, you know, your thought creates your reality, but it's super detailed and very science-based, which is what I was looking for. Since I already know the other side of things, you know, the spiritual way of looking at creation and who we are, growing up a church, a Christian, with my mom being a pastor. And recently, ever since starting my business in personal development, I learned more about the woo ways. You know, there's people out there that use crystals and they just take advantage of the energy around us to create or to influence their reality. And I gotta say, I've always been very fascinated by all of it, even though I followed something specific with, spirituality or, religion or whatever you want to call it. And I started thinking back to my high school years, and how I loved philosophy classes. I remember very clearly being intrigued by Plato's Cave. I don't know if you've heard of that. Maybe you've studied that too, which is a story that he tells to talk about your perceived reality and the real reality. It's very complex and kind of crazy to think about, but really, what is reality? When you stop to think about these things, it's like there is no true or right answer, because what you see is not what someone else sees, which means there isn't one reality. And then eventually, I remember in my senior year, we were introduced to quantum physics, and I was like, whoa, really? This is something that, people have been studying, and this is been proven scientifically that. He talks about that in the book too, that we're like 99.99999% energy and 0.00001 physical substance. I mean, when you look at these facts and things that have been proven, it's just mind-blowing. It really makes you second guess your entire life, which I love because that's how my brain operates, and I just love it. And I'm already looking for an expert on neuroscience or even quantum physics to interview on the show, because this is just awesome and goes hand in hand with my coaching and with what I believe in. And as I've mentioned, I've been, looking back into my past and connecting what I used to like, what I was already inclined to doing, and, really my gifts and my talents, and especially my passion for teaching. And a lot of it, I feel like, when you start your own business, especially with coaching, because you are a teacher, you have these feelings of, imposter syndrome is what we call it. Why me? Who am I to even be talking about this? Are there any moms even out there that are looking for what I'm offering? And again, connecting with all the knowledge I have of the Bible for so many years being involved in church, there is one thing that is called, the body of Christ. And I remember when we talked about having different callings and everyone having different gifts, the Bible says that, every person is like an organ or a member of the body. And that's why they call it the body of Christ, because we're all so different, but we complement each other, you can't replace any member of your body with something else, with another member, you know what I mean? Because they're so unique and very important and irreplaceable. And that's what makes us amazing creatures, because we're so different. And there's even a passage that says, what if the right eye looked at the left eye and said, I'm better than you? There's no such thing. There's no such thing, because literally the right eye is there for a reason. And it can't replay. You know what I'm saying? And I love that analogy so much because it clearly makes sense that we really complement each other and that we all need each other. And again, going back to the Enneagram test, which I always talk about, that really helped me realize how I have faults, but I also have strengths. And it's good for me to be aware of my faults so that I can work on those weaknesses. But it's also very important for me to celebrate my strengths because the world needs me as I am, and that's how I contribute to society. And I can't be afraid of who I am. I have to figure that out first and foremost. And I can't be afraid of putting myself out there because the world literally needs what I have to offer, but I have to figure out what that is first. And this is what I'm helping moms with, is just understanding how amazing they are in their uniqueness. And I feel like we lose a lot of that once we become moms because we're so busy taking care of everybody else. But like I've said so many times, I feel like it's super important for us to figure that out for ourselves so that we can pass that on to our kids. And another point that I wanted to make is because I just analyze things and I keep thinking about things, especially, and that's why I said I loved philosophy and all of those classes. We've been watching Fear Factor and The Amazing Race on Hulu. And this got me thinking even more about all of this, how we can overcome so much more than we give ourselves credit for. How really a lot of it or everything is in our heads. And everyone has different limitations. So when watching these shows, you can see how people are so unique and they have different talents and different limitations. And what I like so much, so let me talk specifically about Fear Factor and what I've been thinking about while watching that show, which if you don't know Fear Factor, you have to look it up. But it's basically, there are 3 different stunts that you have to do that are crazy, that you would never potentially pretty much do in your entire life. And it's very safe. They have all kinds of, safety equipment, and I'm sure like medical team and everything. But it's basically facing your fears. And then if you complete all the stunts, you win, I think, $50,000. And it's really, really interesting to see those things and think about yourself like, would I do that? No, I could do that. And then you start thinking back into the situations where you did feel this fear, that it's really something just produced in your mind. It's not something that is around you. It comes from within you, which means you can change it and overcome it if you just choose to. It's insane. So you should watch it. If you don't know what the show is, just find it. I'm sure there's like clips on YouTube, even if you can watch the whole show. But so it's situations that you probably would never be in, like you have to eat worms, you have to lay in a bed or in a little crate full of mice and they're just nibbling and biting you. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's disgusting. I never would want to do this, or jump from a moving truck to another moving truck and not falling in the middle, which of course they have safety equipment and everything. But it's just things that when you look at it, you're like, there's no way I'm going to do this. But then you start thinking, no, but I can do this. It's going to be okay. So it's all mind game. But it's interesting for me to think about how humanity has had to deal with these things before. We've lived in dirty conditions, and this is how civilizations came to be, or how civilizations started and eventually died and went away. And, they do not exist anymore. I mean, don't even get me started with dinosaurs. Like, we've been watching lots of different dinosaur shows because of the kids. And it's just fascinating to me that they even existed, that people, first and foremost, that people found out about them and were able to put it together and figure out what their skin looked like and what potentially the sound of their voices was like, that's insane. But coming back here to civilization and to thinking about how back in the day, people had to live in crazy conditions like that. And I mean, there's even stuff in the Bible that says that, I forget who it was that was in the desert that had to eat locusts with honey. Like, that's what the food that they had, and that's what they ate. And people out there, even nowadays, they eat different stuff in different areas of the world. And that's just crazy because that's their reality. So that's what they live. And it goes back to what I was saying, like, there is not one reality. Because we're all so different, we see things differently, but then we group up in different groups, and it's really like natural selection, which we study in school in terms of animals and species, but we've been going through the same process, and we still are. Even when you think about technology and some things that 10 years ago were super common. I mean, I remember when smartphones didn't even exist. My parents remember when TV didn't even exist. And that was a completely different reality. So we've been going through this process of natural selection for centuries, for the entire time that humanity has existed. And this entire time that we've been around, we've been living life by trial and error. One person does something, and if that works, the others will follow and maybe modify a bit based on their own circumstances. And this is where I want to talk about Amazing Race, because with the Amazing Race, sometimes you have to do crazy stuff, kind of like Fear Factor, but for the most part, it's all about going to different countries and very remote locations that, again, you would probably never really go to in your lifetime, and see the culture, see that there's this place, this tiny little village at the other side of the world where there's people living there, where there have been people living there for centuries, and they eat a certain way, and, they talk a certain way. And it's all because that's their reality. And it's very different from, for example, what I grew up in, being born in Brazil, or even, for me coming into the US, to think about that, people started this entire country in a completely different way than what Brazil started. That affects today. That affects people's mindset today compared to a Brazilian today. You know what I mean? It's insane. It's like, what is life? But the reason why I'm saying all of this is because when you look at civilizations and when you look at our history, there's always been the need for a leader, for a guide, for a teacher. And that's how it is even with animals. There's always, the leader of the pack. There's always, when you look at insects, when you look at anything, there's always this need of someone that's going to teach somebody else how to do something. And if that one person, for some reason, can't figure something out, then eventually they're going to die, or they're not going to thrive like the others do. And connecting this back with me, I find myself in this position and wondering, why me? Am I really qualified to do this? And the whole imposter syndrome, is it really something that I should be doing? And I see that there is this need, because I have felt this need. And based on everything that I say, especially with the podcast and people resonating with my message and with my crazy thoughts, there is this need out there for moms to find out who they really are, and to hone in on their very unique identity. And especially with my background, with everything that I just told you about how my brain has operated for the last 32 years that I've been alive, I have come to realize that while I used to teach people how to read in a different language, how to communicate in a different language, and even how to understand a different culture because of that language, I am now teaching moms how to define and create their own happiness, because this is what I have been doing my entire life, in a sense. And now becoming a mom was like the turning point, that one moment that is like, now I can really understand that I am the captain of my ship. I'm the captain of my ship called my life. And I can teach my kids this, and I can teach other women this so that they can teach their kids this. You know what I mean? Because I'm not here to tell you how to be happy, because I can't, because we're so different. I don't know what makes you happy because you're different than me, but I can show you how to define that. And I can show you how to, create that for you daily. Because again, like I've said, this amazing quote that I ran into one day that said, work on your happiness like it's a full-time job, because it is. If you don't work on it daily throughout the day, no one can do that for you. They can try, but it's not going to be the real deal, because you have to create it from within, because you are your reality. You know what I mean? So I am so excited about all of the things that I have been developing and really understanding about myself, so that I can pass this on to other women and help them with this. And again, if you haven't checked out my free guide called Find Your Happy, you have to, because I have several different tips on there on how to do this, and things that I have used and that other women have used with my guidance, and that have found it really helpful. And the next step is I'm actually creating a course that I'm in the works. It's just so many projects. But what I want to do is I want to do a webinar in the coming weeks where I'm going to be talking all about this. And outlining my course so that you can see, okay, this is 100% for me, or no, this is not what I want, and decide if you want to learn these things for yourself and just grab hold of your own reality in your own terms, but just, using these tools that I have used. And I'm just so excited because it's been a lot of fun, and especially with all the feedback that I've been getting. So if you haven't downloaded my guide yet, you can just go to martasburke.coach/free guide, or you can go to the link in my bio on Instagram, or to the show notes and find that. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and I'd love for you to connect with me on social media or just email me and say what you thought about this episode and all the things I shared. It's some pretty deep stuff, I think. I love it. Don't forget to take a screenshot and tag me if you love the episode on social media so I can see it, and leave us a review. 5-star rating here on iTunes so we can reach more mamas. And until next time, bye.